The sky above Earth was never so quiet. On a clear morning, when the sun rose over the sprawling cities and endless fields, people noticed a strange object hovering silently in orbit. It was enormous, too large to be a natural satellite, too precise to be a meteor. News channels were flooded with reports, scientists scrambled to analyze data, and governments called emergency meetings. The object did not communicate, it did not attack, it simply appeared. Dr. Mira El-Sayed, a young astrophysicist working for the International Space Observatory, stared at the live feed from the orbital telescope. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement. "It's not just a ship," she whispered to herself. "It's intelligent, and it's here for a reason." Across the world, people stopped their routines. Traffic slowed, phones were held high to capture the moment, and children pointed at the sky, laughing nervously. Social media exploded with theories. Was it a warning? An invasion? Or something even stranger? Then, without warning, the ship projected a beam of soft bluish light toward Earth's atmosphere. The light did not harm, it did not burn. It simply hovered, forming a smooth, shimmering globe above the planet. From it, a voice echoed in all languages simultaneously. "People of Earth," it said. The voice was calm, melodic, almost soothing. "We are the Volari. We come in peace. We have observed your species and your potential. We offer a single favor to aid your civilization, should you choose wisely." Panic and curiosity swept the planet in equal measure. The world's leaders convened an emergency summit. Scientists, philosophers, and diplomats debated what this favor could mean. Was it a trap? Was it a gift? The Volari gave no further details, only a single rule. Humanity must decide the favor and ask for it clearly. In Geneva, the United Nations Hall was filled with tension. Mira had been invited as an advisor, one of the few with experience in alien communication research. She listened as each nation proposed ideas. Some suggested weapons technology to secure their position in the world. Others suggested wealth, cures for diseases, or elimination of global problems like pollution. Mira raised her hand, her voice steady but urgent. "We have one chance to ask for something truly meaningful. We can solve poverty, hunger, and scarcity not just for a generation but forever. We can ensure no child ever goes hungry. No family ever suffers from lack. If we choose this, it could change the course of our species completely." The room fell silent. Many nodded in agreement, though some leaders looked uneasy. After hours of debate, a consensus was reached. Humanity would ask the Volari for a solution that prevents scarcity forever. The Volari ship responded immediately. A beam of golden light enveloped Earth, and the device they called the Aegis engine began its work. Scientists described it as a machine that could manipulate matter and energy at a fundamental level, creating food, energy, and materials almost instantly. Crops grew at unprecedented rates, water purification systems worked perfectly, and disease-causing pathogens were neutralized at the microscopic level. At first, people celebrated. Cities that had struggled with famine now had abundant food. Clean water flowed everywhere. Energy became almost limitless, allowing factories, hospitals, and schools to function without interruption. Humanity had achieved what generations before could only dream of. But the changes were not limited to material wealth. Humans began to notice subtle shifts. Learning new skills felt easier. People retained knowledge faster. Creativity flourished in ways no one had predicted. Mira noticed this first in her laboratory. Her colleagues were solving complex problems in hours instead of days. Entire teams could innovate and invent at unprecedented speeds. Even more extraordinary were the dreams. At night, many humans experienced vivid visions of distant worlds, strange landscapes, and alien beings. The dreams were not frightening but oddly instructive, as if humanity's mind was being gently guided toward new understanding. Some people could suddenly communicate with animals in ways that seemed impossible. Birds and mammals displayed remarkable intelligence, responding to humans as if understanding their intentions. Mira spent long nights in her observatory, studying these changes. She recorded every anomaly, every extraordinary development. She was thrilled, yet a small part of her felt unease. The Volari device had changed the world in ways beyond comprehension, and she wondered whether such rapid progress was truly safe. Governments tried to regulate the newfound abilities. Laws were passed to control advanced technology use, but enforcement was nearly impossible. A child could build a device that harvested energy from sunlight more efficiently than anything previously invented. Adults could solve problems in minutes that had taken entire communities years. Humanity was becoming something else, more than human and perhaps not yet ready to handle it. Meanwhile, the Volari observed silently. They never intervened, never corrected mistakes, never explained the mechanics of the Aegis engine. It was as if they had given humanity a seed and were waiting to see how it would grow. One evening, Mira received a communication from a team in South America. They reported that a newly grown forest, created in a previously barren region, had begun exhibiting unusual behaviors. Plants seemed to move subtly, almost like they were aware of humans nearby. Rivers adjusted their courses as if avoiding certain areas. Animals moved in patterns that suggested organized planning. It was as if life itself was responding to the changes humanity had introduced. Mira's concern deepened. "We've solved hunger and scarcity," she told her colleagues, "but we may have also changed the balance of life on Earth. We are no longer just humans among nature. We are something new, and I'm not sure we understand what that means yet." Despite the warnings, people's excitement only grew. Cities expanded, industries flourished, and global cooperation reached levels never before imagined. Conflicts decreased as resources became plentiful. People traveled freely, shared knowledge, and pursued art, science, and exploration like never before. The world had become a golden age for humanity. Yet even in this age of wonder, subtle signs reminded Mira of the fragile line they had crossed. Birds sang in strange harmonies. Forests seemed to whisper, and occasionally in her dreams she saw a vast, silent figure watching humanity from the stars. The figure was not threatening, but its presence carried weight. A quiet reminder that the Volari were observing every decision, every change, every new power humanity discovered. One night, as Mira gazed at the stars, she whispered to herself, "We were given a single favor, and we have returned it with our own ambition. I hope we are ready for what comes next." The sky remained calm, the stars twinkled, and the Volari ship continued to hover silently. But far above, beyond what human eyes could see, the universe had begun to shift. A single favor had been granted, and with it, humanity's destiny was no longer in their own hands alone. It was intertwined with forces far greater than they could yet comprehend. As dawn broke over Earth, humans awoke to a world that had changed forever. Crops ripened in hours, water sparkled like crystal, and children laughed in streets free of want. It was a gift beyond imagination, a new beginning. But somewhere in the subtle patterns of nature, in the silent whispers of animals, and in the quiet hum of the Aegis engine, the first hints of consequences stirred, consequences that no one could yet foresee. Humanity had stepped onto a path of extraordinary power, and the journey had only just begun. The world had changed, and so had humanity. What had begun as a gift, the Aegis engine from the Volari, was now reshaping life on Earth in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity thrived. Cities gleamed under unlimited energy. Diseases vanished, and hunger became a word that no child would ever know. But as the days passed, subtle transformations began to appear, not just in technology and nature, but in humans themselves. Dr. Mira al-Sayed was among the first to notice. At the International Space Observatory, she had access to the most advanced instruments and vast amounts of data. Her team observed that human cognitive abilities were increasing at a pace never seen before. People could learn new languages overnight. Engineers developed complex machines in hours. Doctors cured diseases that had baffled humanity for centuries. Even ordinary children were solving puzzles and problems far beyond their age. It was extraordinary and terrifying. Mira documented everything meticulously. She noticed that the more people used the Aegis engine's resources, the more their minds seemed to expand. Some developed near-perfect memory. Others could intuit solutions without reasoning step by step. At first, governments celebrated. They called it a new era of enlightenment. Universities and research centers flourished. Education was no longer a slow process. Humans were now capable of learning and applying knowledge at astonishing speed. Mira knew this was the beginning of something unprecedented, but she also sensed that rapid evolution rarely came without risks. The first clear signs of unusual human ability appeared in subtle ways. A young farmer in Kenya, who had been struggling to grow crops before the Aegis engine, now harvested enough food in days to feed entire villages. But the most surprising part was that he began communicating with the animals on his farm. Goats, cows, even birds seemed to respond to him in ways he could understand. Other reports surfaced, children speaking in strange, harmonious tones that seemed to convey more than simple words. Humans could predict storms, locate lost objects, and sometimes finish tasks without clear explanation. It was as if the human mind was unlocking doors that had remained closed for millennia. One morning, Mira received an urgent message from the Amazon rainforest. A team of ecologists reported that newly grown forests, flourishing far beyond human expectation, were behaving strangely. Trees shifted subtly, aligning themselves with rivers, sunlight, and wind patterns in ways that suggested intention. Animals moved in coordinated groups, almost as if they were strategizing together. Mira realized the Aegis engine was not only changing humans, it was altering the relationship between all living beings. While the world rejoiced in this golden age, Mira worried. She saw signs of imbalance. Some humans were developing abilities far beyond normal comprehension. A teenager in Japan could anticipate earthquakes before seismographs recorded them. A scientist in Canada could repair complex machines with his mind alone. At first, these abilities seemed beneficial, but Mira knew that such power carried responsibility. Humanity was evolving faster than its ability to understand or control itself. In New York, a group of enhanced humans, those whose abilities had developed most rapidly, formed a collaborative lab called the Nexus. Their goal was to explore and harness these new skills for the good of humanity. Mira visited them, hoping to understand the limits of these transformations. Inside the lab, children and adults worked side by side. One girl could manipulate small objects remotely. A man could analyze entire chemical systems in seconds. The energy in the room was electric, filled with creativity and curiosity. Mira was amazed, but a part of her remained cautious. What if we push too far? She asked the Nexus team. What if we start changing things we cannot control? Nature is not just ours to command. One of the young men, with eyes bright with intelligence, replied, Dr. Mira, we are not replacing nature. We are cooperating with it. Everything we do now benefits life. This is evolution, guided by knowledge. Mira nodded but felt uneasy. The signs of imbalance were subtle but persistent. Rivers altered their courses slightly. Oceans displayed unusual tides, and weather patterns shifted in unexpected ways. It was as though the Aegis engine had begun weaving humanity into the fabric of the planet itself. Meanwhile, the Volari watched silently. Their ship hovered in orbit, unmoving, almost invisible against the stars. No communication arrived, no instructions given. Humanity had been granted a gift, but now it was their responsibility to wield it wisely. The Volari's silence was heavy, filled with expectation. One evening, Mira observed something that made her heart race. From her telescope, she saw what looked like a network of energy connecting humans in major cities. It was faint, almost invisible, but unmistakable. People were beginning to share thoughts, knowledge, and awareness without speaking. The world was becoming connected on a level beyond the internet, beyond language, beyond what humans had ever known. She realized then that the gift from the Volari was not only material, it was evolutionary. Humanity was being transformed into a species capable of extraordinary thought, creativity, and understanding. The question was whether humans could control it responsibly. Not everyone adapted smoothly. Some people experienced confusion, stress, or anxiety as their minds evolved faster than their understanding. Governments tried to intervene, but the pace of change was beyond their control. Societies faced challenges in adjusting to this new reality. Education systems, laws, and social structures were quickly becoming outdated. Yet humanity's potential was breathtaking. Cities became hubs of innovation. People communicated seamlessly with machines, animals, and one another. Problems that had plagued nations for centuries were solved almost effortlessly. Mira witnessed firsthand a new form of human intelligence, one that combined reason, intuition, and empathy in ways never seen before. As she watched, Mira began to notice something more extraordinary. Humans were beginning to see the universe differently. Children described stars as if they were alive, planets as if they had personalities, and distant galaxies as if they communicated silently with Earth. Dreams of alien landscapes became common, as though the mind was reaching out to the stars. One night, Mira had her own vision. In her sleep, she found herself standing on a distant world. The air shimmered with light, and towering beings moved gracefully across a landscape of crystal and water. They did not speak, yet she understood them. They were the Valari, or perhaps the universe itself, observing humanity, waiting to see if humans could handle the power they had been given. When she awoke, Mira felt a mix of awe and dread. The changes were beautiful, but the responsibility was enormous. Humanity had been given the tools to thrive, to surpass its former limitations. But every gift came with a cost, and she had a growing suspicion that the cost was not yet visible. Reports came in from around the world. Animals exhibited intelligence beyond expectation. Forests and oceans behaved unpredictably. Rivers carved new paths without explanation. Weather shifted subtly but noticeably. Humanity's progress was astounding, but it had begun to reshape the world itself. Dr. Mira began drafting warnings, suggesting careful observation, education, and restraint. She presented her findings at a global conference, urging humanity to proceed wisely. "We are at the edge of something incredible," she said. "But we must remember that power without understanding can become danger. We must guide our evolution with care, or the consequences may be more than we can bear." Her words were met with a mixture of respect and skepticism. Many were too enthralled by their abilities, too excited by the new world unfolding before them, but a few listened carefully. Among them were leaders, teachers, and enhanced humans who understood that unchecked power, no matter how well-intentioned, could lead to disaster. As the world slept, Mira gazed at the stars. The Valari ship remained silent and still. Humanity had taken the first steps into a new era, an era of intelligence, creativity, and possibility beyond imagination. Yet the questions lingered. Could humans use this power responsibly? Could they maintain balance with nature, with the planet, and with each other? And most importantly, were they ready for the consequences of the favor that had been given? Somewhere deep in the forests, animals moved in patterns that seemed deliberate. Rivers whispered. Winds carried strange harmonies, and the stars shone with a brilliance that felt almost knowing. Humanity's journey had begun, and with it, a transformation that would define the species for generations to come. Dr. Mira understood one truth above all. Humanity had been given more than a gift. They had been given a test, a chance to prove that they could wield power responsibly with wisdom and compassion. And the world held its breath, waiting to see whether humanity would rise to the challenge or stumble under the weight of its own potential. Humanity's rise was breathtaking. Cities gleamed like silver under endless energy. Crops grew faster than ever imagined, and the oceans yielded resources without struggle. Humans could build, create, and understand things that had once been impossible. They reached out to the stars, planning colonies on distant worlds. Yet beneath the awe and excitement, subtle warnings began to emerge. Dr. Mira al-Sayed had been observing the world closely. At first, she had marveled at humanity's abilities, the rapid expansion of knowledge and the unity brought by the Valari's favor. But now her careful studies revealed a troubling pattern. Some humans were pushing their abilities recklessly. Young engineers, doctors, and explorers, enhanced by the Valari device, attempted feats beyond understanding. Machines collapsed under strain. Experiments caused unexpected chain reactions, and in some regions, weather patterns had grown unpredictable. In Tokyo, a research team tried to construct a device capable of extracting energy directly from the sun's core. The project failed, releasing a burst of energy that temporarily disrupted the city's entire electrical grid. In Kenya, a village equipped with advanced agricultural technology inadvertently altered the course of a river, flooding areas downstream that had been safe for decades. Even the forests, now growing faster and more intelligently, began behaving strangely, creating dense, labyrinthine patterns that humans could barely navigate. Mira realized that every enhancement, every gift was tied to the natural balance of life. The Valari had not simply solved humanity's problems, they had given humans power without limits, and power without limits carried consequences. She convened a global council of scientists, leaders, and enhanced humans at the newly established Unity Hall in Geneva. The room buzzed with tension. Screens displayed data from every continent, storms forming unpredictably, animal populations behaving erratically, and rivers redirecting themselves in subtle but dangerous ways. We are not just changing ourselves. Mira began, her voice calm but firm. "We are changing the world, every ecosystem, every living being. The Aegis engine gave us power, but it also created consequences we do not fully understand." A young woman from the Nexus team spoke up, her tone defiant. "Dr. Mira, everything we do benefits humanity. We can fix problems faster than ever." "The world has never been better." "Yes," Mira replied, "but the world has never been this fragile either. Every time we push the limits of our abilities, the balance of life shifts. Nature is responding, and sometimes it is responding unpredictably. This is not punishment. It is a warning." Outside, the changes became impossible to ignore. In the Amazon, newly grown forests had begun moving subtly, changing river courses and redirecting animals. Scientists reported that the animals were no longer simply reacting. They were planning, adapting, cooperating in ways that suggested intelligence beyond normal. In the ocean, schools of fish coordinated in massive formations, avoiding areas humans intended to use for construction or research. Birds shifted migratory patterns, sometimes in ways that protected humans, sometimes in ways that seemed cryptic and unpredictable. Meanwhile, enhanced humans discovered abilities far beyond what Mira had seen before. Some could predict natural events with near-perfect accuracy. Others could manipulate technology with their minds. A few rare individuals could seemingly influence small living things. Plants and animals responded to their intentions almost instantly. While these abilities excited many, Mira grew increasingly concerned. Humanity was becoming powerful, but the planet itself was no longer the same. There was a delicate balance, and humans were only beginning to understand it. One morning, a team monitoring the Himalayas reported a shocking anomaly. A glacier, newly grown by the Aegis engine's influence, had shifted suddenly, creating massive flooding downstream. Villages were evacuated in time, but the event was a stark warning. Even good intentions could lead to disaster. Mira felt a chill. Humanity's actions were not entirely predictable, and the Volari device was at the center of it all. Mira traveled to observe one of the most advanced experiments yet, a human colony on Mars. Humans had terraformed a small region, making it habitable. Crops grew within hours, water flowed naturally, and the air was breathable. Yet there was tension among the colonists. Enhanced humans sometimes clashed, their abilities giving them overwhelming advantage. Small disagreements could escalate quickly, their intelligence outpacing their understanding of diplomacy and ethics. On Mars, Mira met Jalen, an enhanced human capable of sensing energy flows and predicting mechanical failures. Jalen explained, "Dr. Mira, we are learning faster than the planet can adapt. Every action we take has consequences beyond what we see. We can fix some problems, but others, they surprise us." "Exactly," Mira said, "and we are only seeing the beginning. The Volari gave us a gift, but we are now responsible for it. We must understand the consequences before it is too late." Back on Earth, reports became more frequent. Hurricanes shifted without explanation. New species of plants and animals appeared spontaneously, and sometimes human settlements noticed anomalous behavior in their pets or livestock. A silent intelligence, almost as if they were being guided by unseen forces. Mira realized that the Aegis engine was not just aiding humanity, it was accelerating evolution, not only for humans but for life across the planet. Nature was learning alongside humans. Humans were powerful, but they were also now part of a larger system that required careful observation, respect, and restraint. Governments debated what to do. Some argued for deactivating the Aegis engine. Others said that was impossible, as it had integrated with human evolution. A few suggested using enhanced humans to control and predict outcomes, but Mira warned that relying too heavily on individuals could be dangerous. One evening, Mira returned to her observatory and gazed at the stars. The Volari ship hovered silently in orbit, unchanged. She realized something crucial. The Volari had not interfered. They had given humanity a test, a chance to grow, evolve, and prove they could handle immense power responsibly. Every decision, every choice would be observed, if not by the Volari, then by the balance of life itself. A sudden thought struck her. "Perhaps this is not punishment," she whispered to herself. "Perhaps the Volari never meant to control us. Perhaps they wanted to see if we could rise above our limitations and guide our own evolution with wisdom." But the warnings continued. In South America, a massive storm formed unusually fast over the Andes. Enhanced humans predicted it, but its strength and direction were unpredictable. Entire ecosystems were affected. Communities adapted, evacuated, and survived, but the event was a clear demonstration. Humanity's influence on the planet had consequences beyond imagination. In Africa,
Mira visited a research team studying deserts that had transformed overnight into fertile lands.
crops thrived and animals returned. But Mira noticed that some regions became too dense, ecosystems overcrowded and competing for resources. She realized that even the best intentions could inadvertently create problems. Humans began to understand something crucial. Power without understanding could be dangerous. Knowledge alone was not enough. They needed wisdom, restraint, and a deep respect for life in all its forms. At Unity Hall, Mira presented a new proposal. We must study, monitor, and learn from the changes we are creating. We cannot control everything, but we can guide our actions responsibly. Our gift is immense, but with it comes responsibility. The Valari have entrusted us not just with power, but with a future we must protect. Enhanced humans, world leaders, and scientists listened carefully. Some were eager to implement guidelines. Others were impatient, focused on progress. Mira understood that change would be gradual. Humanity had entered a new era, one of extraordinary power, breathtaking achievements, and significant consequences. That night, Mira had another vision. This time, she saw vast networks connecting humans, animals, and plants. Energy flowed between them like invisible rivers. Life was interconnected in ways no one had fully grasped. The Valari ship floated above, observing silently. She realized that humanity had already begun altering not just Earth, but the planet's very fabric. The lesson was clear. Every action had a reaction. Every choice had consequences. Humanity's growth, achievements, and power were undeniable, but they were intertwined with forces far greater than themselves. As she awoke, Mira understood one truth. The reckoning had begun. Humanity's rise was spectacular, but the world was teaching a lesson in humility. The Aegis engine had granted power beyond imagination, but it had also made humanity responsible for the consequences of every action. And somewhere in the forests, the oceans and the skies, life continued to adapt. Animals coordinated, plants shifted, and ecosystems whispered in ways humans had not yet fully understood. The Valari's gift had unlocked potential, but it had also created challenges that would test humanity in ways the species had never faced before. Mira took a deep breath. Humanity had changed forever. The power was theirs. The challenge was theirs. And the consequences, whatever they might be, were only beginning to unfold. The world had reached a crossroads. Humanity had gained abilities and power beyond imagination. Yet the consequences of their rapid growth were becoming impossible to ignore. Rivers redirected themselves without warning. Animals displayed intelligence that rivaled humans, and forests shifted in unpredictable ways. Even the enhanced humans, those who had benefited most from the Valari's gift, realized that the world was no longer entirely theirs to control. Dr. Mira al-Sayed called for a global summit, gathering leaders, scientists, and enhanced humans from every continent. The atmosphere in Unity Hall was tense, a mixture of awe and fear. Screens displayed real-time data, ocean currents shifting, deserts turning green, storms forming faster than ever predicted. Humanity had achieved miracles, but at what cost? Mira addressed the assembly, her voice steady. We have been given a single favor by the Valari. It has transformed our species and our planet. We can achieve almost anything, yet the consequences of our actions are now visible. Nature itself has begun responding, and sometimes it is unpredictable. We must decide how to move forward. Do we continue to rely on this power without restraint, or do we take responsibility and guide it wisely? Some leaders argued that deactivating the Valari device, the Aegis engine, was impossible. It was now integrated into human evolution. Attempts to shut it down could undo centuries of progress and even harm those who had become enhanced. Others feared that continuing without limits would ultimately destroy ecosystems and destabilize the planet. A heated debate ensued. One politician demanded, "We should use this power to advance humanity as quickly as possible. We cannot let fear hold us back. Our potential is limitless, An enhanced human whose mind could process information at lightning speed countered, "Limitless potential is meaningless if we destroy the balance of life around us. We must act responsibly, or our power will become our undoing." Mira listened carefully, knowing the weight of the decision. Humanity had been entrusted with a gift that could shape the species' destiny, but they also had to prove they were wise enough to wield it. She proposed a solution. Rather than deactivating the Aegis engine entirely, humans should learn to guide it consciously. Enhanced humans would serve as teachers and guardians, helping the rest of humanity understand the consequences of their actions and make responsible choices. Education, restraint, and cooperation would become as important as the abilities themselves. The Council agreed to establish a new global institution, the Harmony Council, tasked with teaching humans how to balance progress with responsibility. Enhanced humans would lead research, training, and monitoring programs. Citizens would learn to understand the connections between their actions and the natural world. Humanity's evolution would no longer be reckless. It would be guided. Mira felt a sense of cautious relief. The choice was not easy, but it was necessary. The Aegis engine had given humanity immense power, but it was now their responsibility to ensure that power was used wisely. Even with the Harmony Council in place, challenges arose quickly. In Asia, enhanced engineers working on a transportation project accidentally destabilized a mountain range, causing landslides. In North America, enhanced agricultural experts introduced a new crop that thrived beyond expectation, outcompeting native plants and disrupting local ecosystems. Mira realized that teaching responsibility would be a long process. Knowledge alone could not prevent mistakes. Humans had to learn humility, patience, and foresight. The Harmony Council began designing programs to educate humanity in ethics, cooperation, and environmental balance, alongside scientific advancement. Meanwhile, enhanced humans began forming teams dedicated to understanding life itself. Biologists, engineers, and thinkers worked together to study the subtle ways the Aegis engine influenced evolution. They discovered that animals and plants were evolving alongside humans, creating new forms of intelligence that had never existed before. Birds communicated with humans in simple patterns. Forests grew in ways that suggested deliberate design, and rivers adjusted themselves in response to human activity. Mira observed these changes with a mixture of wonder and concern. The world was alive in a way that had never been seen before. Humanity was no longer separate from nature. They were part of a larger system. Every choice had consequences, and even small actions could ripple across the planet. In Europe, a small group of enhanced humans experimented with communication between species. They discovered that some animals could convey intentions, warnings, and even complex emotions. Communities learned to cooperate with animals, predicting natural events and avoiding disasters. It was a new form of symbiosis, one that required humans to think beyond themselves. Despite progress, there were still dangers. Some enhanced humans became arrogant, believing they could control the planet entirely. They pushed boundaries recklessly, attempting experiments that destabilized ecosystems or endangered lives. Mira and the Harmony Council worked tirelessly to guide them, teaching restraint and responsibility. One evening, Mira stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Waves crashed below, forming patterns that seemed almost deliberate. She reflected on the Valari's gift. Humanity had been given a favor beyond imagination, but it had come with an unspoken lesson. Power without wisdom could lead to disaster, while wisdom could create harmony. A vision came to her, a familiar presence she had seen before in her dreams. The Valari ship hovered above Earth, silent and observant. Mira realized that the aliens were not intervening because they wanted humanity to choose wisely on its own. They had given humans an opportunity to evolve, to grow, and to prove their worth. In the months that followed, the Harmony Council made progress. Schools taught enhanced humans to guide their peers. Communities learned to cooperate with nature, and humanity began to understand the delicate balance of life. Mistakes still happened, but the species was learning, adapting, and improving. Mira visited a research center in South America where enhanced humans monitored a newly grown rainforest. Trees were moving subtly, forming pathways for animals and protecting vulnerable species. Humans had learned to observe rather than control, to cooperate rather than dominate. It was a lesson hard-earned but effective. At the same time, humans continued to explore space. Colonies on Mars and the Moon thrived, powered by the Aegis engine and guided by ethical protocols. Knowledge was shared freely, and enhanced humans taught colonists how to respect ecosystems and ensure balance. Humanity's golden age was no longer reckless. It was tempered by responsibility. Yet Mira knew the challenges were far from over. The Aegis engine had changed not only humans, but the planet itself. Every action had ripple effects that could not always be predicted. Humanity's greatest test had only just begun: to use power wisely, to respect life in all its forms, and to prove that the species was worthy of the gift it had received. One night, Mira returned to her observatory and looked at the stars. The Volari ship remained silent, a reminder of the favor they had given and the responsibility it entailed. Humanity had chosen a path of guidance, education, and cooperation. They had made a choice to respect life, to balance ambition with humility, and to harness their power for good. Dr. Mira al-Sayed understood the truth clearly. The choice had not been easy, but it was essential. Humanity had been tested and the journey toward responsibility had begun. The Aegis engine was no longer a simple gift. It was a challenge, a guide, and a mirror reflecting the species' potential and limitations. As she gazed at the horizon, Mira felt hope. Humanity had learned that greatness was not measured by power alone, but by the wisdom with which it was used. The world was changing, evolving, and growing, but for the first time, humans were learning to guide their evolution consciously, ethically, and with respect for all life, and somewhere, deep in the forests, oceans, and skies, life continued to adapt. Animals communicated, plants shifted deliberately, and ecosystems responded to human actions. The balance of the planet depended on humans' choices, and now, for the first time, humanity had begun to understand the weight of those choices. The path ahead would be difficult. Mistakes would happen and challenges would arise. But humanity had made a choice to guide power with wisdom, to respect life, and to prove that the species was capable of extraordinary responsibility. The Aegis engine continued to hum silently in orbit, a symbol of potential, challenge, and hope. Humanity had been given a favor beyond imagination. They had chosen responsibility, and for the first time the future felt truly within their hands. Decades had passed since the Volari had first granted humanity their single favor. The world was no longer as it had been. Cities gleamed with energy that never faded. Forests thrived in harmony with humans, and rivers flowed in patterns that seemed guided by intelligence. Humanity had grown, evolved, and adapted, not just physically and mentally, but morally. The Aegis engine was no longer merely a tool. It had become a part of humanity's civilization, a symbol of potential tempered by wisdom. Dr. Mira al-Sayed, now older but still sharp-eyed, walked through a lush forest that had been barren only a few decades before. Birds sang in complex patterns, seemingly communicating with one another. Trees had grown into shapes that guided sunlight efficiently to smaller plants below, protecting the delicate ecosystems. Mira smiled, seeing children laughing as they learned not only to care for each other but also to cooperate with nature. Humanity had learned restraint, empathy, and responsibility. In Geneva, the Harmony Council continued its work, ensuring that humans of all abilities understood the consequences of their actions. Enhanced humans taught others to think not only of themselves but of the world as a whole. Education combined ethics, science, and empathy. Conflicts, once driven by greed and fear, had greatly diminished. Humans had learned that cooperation was stronger than competition when guided by responsibility. Space exploration had reached a new height. Humans now lived on Mars, the Moon, and several newly terraformed planets within the solar system. Colonies were thriving, guided by principles learned from Earth. Advanced technology and enhanced humans allowed these colonies to flourish while keeping ecosystems balanced and sustainable. Mira visited one colony on Mars, marveling at the harmony between human settlements and the alien landscape. Children on Mars learned about Earth not as a distant planet of scarcity and conflict, but as the birthplace of a species that had risen to greatness. They studied the history of humanity's first encounter with the Volari, learning how a single favor had transformed not only their species, but the entire planet. It was a story of responsibility, courage, and growth. Yet even as humanity celebrated, the lessons of the past were never forgotten. Mira had witnessed firsthand the early recklessness of enhanced humans, the unpredictable changes in ecosystems and the subtle warnings from nature. She often reminded leaders and students alike, power without wisdom is dangerous. Knowledge alone is not enough. We must always guide ourselves with respect, understanding, and humility. The Valari ship remained in orbit, quiet and still. Unlike when it had first appeared, it no longer radiated energy or influence over the planet. It had completed its part of the favor and now observed humanity with distant admiration. Humanity had passed a test, though no one had known exactly what the rules were. The gift had been immense, but so had the responsibility, and humans had risen to meet it. On Earth, ecosystems thrived. Rivers flowed in harmony with human settlements, forests expanded without overwhelming human communities, and animals communicated in ways that enhanced life rather than threatened it. Humans had become stewards of their planet, understanding that every action carried weight and that even the smallest decision could ripple across ecosystems. Enhanced humans continued to teach, mentor, and guide. They were no longer simply stronger or faster, they were wise. They understood the limits of power and the value of patience. They demonstrated that true advancement was measured not by what humans could do, but by how responsibly they used their abilities. Mira often reflected on the early days, when humanity had been enthralled by the possibilities of the Aegis engine. The excitement had been palpable, the achievements breathtaking, but the consequences had been unpredictable. Entire communities had been endangered by mistakes, and nature itself had reminded humans that balance could not be ignored. She had learned then, as she now reminded others, that every gift came with responsibility, and every advantage came with a duty to protect life itself. Across the galaxy, other civilizations began to take notice of humanity. They observed a species that had been offered unimaginable power and had chosen not just to use it, but to respect life, learn from mistakes, and guide its evolution ethically. Humanity became a beacon of hope, a species capable of both extraordinary creativity and profound wisdom. On a distant planet, humans taught alien civilizations how to maintain balance while progressing technologically. They shared knowledge freely, demonstrating that power was meaningful only when guided by ethics and responsibility. The story of the Valari's gift became a lesson not just for humanity, but for countless other species seeking harmony with their worlds. In her private observatory, Mira gazed at Earth from orbit. She saw sprawling forests, thriving oceans, and human cities that blended with nature rather than dominating it. The planet was alive in ways she had never imagined, yet every change had been guided by conscious choices. Humanity had become a caretaker, a species capable of extraordinary kindness, ingenuity, and responsibility. Children played in the forests, learning from animals and plants. Schools taught cooperation between species, the ethics of exploration, and the importance of understanding consequences. Humans no longer acted out of greed or fear. They acted out of knowledge, respect, and empathy. The mistakes of the early years had shaped them into a species ready to face the future with courage and wisdom. Mira reflected on the Valari ship, floating silently above Earth. Their favor had been simple in appearance, yet profound in impact. Humanity had been given a choice, a single favor, and they had returned it with responsible action, wisdom, and cooperation. The consequences, once feared, had become a testament to what a species could achieve when it embraced both power and responsibility. Stories of the past were taught across generations. They spoke of the day the Valari arrived, of the debates about what favor to request, and of the transformations that followed. These stories reminded humans that greatness was not measured by what they could do alone, but by how thoughtfully they shaped the world around them. Mira often visited the forests near her home, observing the delicate interactions between humans, animals, and plants. She saw children learning from birds, engineers studying how trees channeled sunlight, and communities cooperating to maintain ecosystems. Humans had learned that intelligence alone was not enough. Wisdom, empathy, and respect were equally important. In the oceans, humans and enhanced aquatic species worked together to monitor marine ecosystems. Coral reefs flourished, fish populations thrived, and entire oceanic regions were carefully managed. Humans had become stewards not only of their planet, but of life itself, understanding that power was meaningful only when it preserved harmony. On Mars, Children marveled at the red desert landscapes that had been transformed into thriving colonies. They learned from their teachers that the Aegis engine had given humanity a chance, and that their responsibility was to continue guiding progress with care. Mira visited them often, reminding them, "The universe is vast, but your choices ripple across worlds. Respect life, learn from mistakes, and always guide your power with wisdom." Despite the immense achievements, humans remained humble. They understood that the universe was greater than any one species, that life was interconnected, and that even the most advanced abilities must be tempered with responsibility. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. Greatness was not in power itself, but in the thoughtful, ethical, and compassionate use of it. Mira's final reflection came as she stood beneath the night sky, watching the stars twinkle above. The Valari ship remained distant, a silent witness to humanity's journey. Humans had proven themselves worthy, not through dominance but through wisdom, cooperation, and respect. They had returned the favor of the Valari not with recklessness, but with responsibility and insight beyond imagination. And so, humanity's story became a legend among the stars. They were a species capable of extraordinary achievement, tempered by ethics and responsibility. The Aegis engine remained a symbol not just of power, but of potential guided by wisdom, empathy, and respect for life itself. The forest whispered, the rivers sang, and the oceans glimmered under the light of countless stars. Humanity had become a species worthy of the universe, capable of shaping their destiny while preserving the delicate balance of life. Dr. Mira al-Sayed smiled, knowing that the future of humanity was bright, not because they had power, but because they had learned how to use it responsibly. The single favor had sparked a transformation beyond imagination, and the consequences, once feared, had become a legacy of hope, growth, and greatness. In the end, humanity had proven that when a species combines intelligence with wisdom, curiosity with responsibility, and power with empathy, it can achieve greatness that resonates across worlds. And somewhere among the stars, the Valari watched silently, knowing that their gift had been returned in the most extraordinary way imaginable. Humanity's journey was far from over, but one truth was clear: they had chosen not just to survive, but to thrive with honor, humility, and courage, and that choice had changed everything.